Hey, welcome to the Elle Russ Show. My name is Elle Russ, and I am a #1 best-selling author and master coach. My intention is to inspire, educate, and motivate you with weekly content featuring amazing guests and solo episodes. Visit my website, elleruss.com, to learn more about me, my courses, free masterclasses, partner discounts, and much more. Enjoy the show. Dahlya Brown Shook, welcome to the show. How are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on.
So, it's very interesting when you look at your website and we're looking into your work, a lot of it might seem very elusive and ethereal to people, right? So, you've got holistic healing expertise, trauma, lots of certifications. Why don't you give us your personal story of how you arrived at where you're at now?
Oh, I love that question. And it can get quite lengthy, just like so many people's stories. So I'm just going to try and give you some nuts and bolts. I was raised in a medically based family. My father is a retired neurologist who is absolutely brilliant. And I think because of that, I was very much raised in this very cognitive, structured, somewhat critical environment of being this high achiever. Mm-hmm. That being said, at 12 months old, I experienced a trauma. And on the medical side of things, I had inflammation in the back of my throat. It stopped my breathing. I turned blue. I went into the ICU for, the next 6 weeks. And because of that, I had an expressive learning disability. I actually had engaged in a self-regulation technique called trichotillomania, which is compulsive hair pulling, skin picking, and nail biting. It's also known as a body-focused repetitive behavior for any of your listeners who may not know anything about that, but may recognize that someone in their family knows.
Yeah, let me interject. Let me interject right there to clarify something. So as a result of the trauma, you got this sort of disorder issue that was happening?
That it's an interesting question. So when you look at it, the answer is yes. However, now we know that there is a genetic background, that there are other neurological reasons why something like that could happen. But I was, engaging in pulling my hair at 12 months old, which most babies don't do. Although all babies will suck their thumb, and it is a self-regulation technique. So I grew out of that at 15, and I had a great childhood. I was very happy. At 15, I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder and anxiety, and I would end up being put on medicine and a cocktail of medicines for the next, 25 years of my life. Thinking that, and I don't like saying this, but it's just there was something wrong inside of me.
Sure, something's wrong with me.
Nothing. Yeah. Right. And everything that I tried, everything that we tried, my family was very resourceful, was never really the end all be all to help me heal. So through it all, I found other ways to self-regulate that may have been maladaptive, and, drugs, alcohol, boys, you name it, whatever it was. I also found the healing side of it, which was dance and movement and art and all of the creatives that a lot of highly sensitive, empathetic people will navigate towards. I still went to college, got my undergrad degree, got my graduate degree. And in that graduate degree is when I was really, when I learned about occupational therapy, that it was what my master's degree is in, and learning about the nervous system, the sensory nervous system, and all of the different ways that not just that the body and the brain can go haywire, but all these other ways that it can actually help it heal. This is how we do brain rewiring. This is actually how we heal. Through that whole experience, I ended up getting certified in integrative medicine for mental health, and I did a gut healing protocol. And through all of that, I was able to get off of my medications, which is something we never thought would ever be possible for my lived experience. And
I love hearing that,
go ahead.
Because one of the things about that is, this is regardless of whether someone is, I touch on it in one of my books, but there's a famous celebrity personal trainer. And since 11 years old, she was on antidepressants and all sorts of stuff, but she was fit and whatever. But she always had this issue, and her parents and the doctors at the time were well, this is just the way you are, and that's imprinted into you. I have a problem. Something's inherently wrong with me. Nothing's working. They've tried everything, right? And I get that. And then it's interesting, many, many years later, she takes a couple of antibody tests, realizes she has, despite not immediately feeling it. She has an incredible sensitivity to grains and dairy. She cut them out, and for the first time in her life at age 40, got off all medications. So I love your story. It mimics that in terms of if you're out there, if someone stamped a label on you or you stamped one on yourself, you keep persevering and you're going to get there. And I think that that's what you did. I also would like you to just clarify to the audience, tell us what occupational therapy is.
Absolutely. It's so funny. When we were learning about occupational therapy and how to talk about it, people would say, do you help people get a job? And the answer is really no. Occupational therapy is really, it's the skills of the living, learning how to navigate and engage in the activities that you are passionate about, depending on the age, depending on maybe different diseases or different diagnoses or disabilities, physical or emotional or spiritual. One second. There we go. Depending on where you are in your stage of life, that can look like different things. So for a child, their occupation is play. For an adult, our occupation, we have different roles. For me, I am a mother, I am a daughter, I am a sister, I am a stepmom, I am a business owner. All of these roles require different levels of integration and activity. And if one of those activities, either due to physical disability, emotional stress, or environmental, is impacted in a negative way, it can take a toll on the body and the ability to engage in those activities. So the whole purpose of occupational therapy is to engage in activities of life as independently as possible and as effectively and efficiently as possible. Does it answer your question?
Yes, it does. So continue on.
Yes. So I actually thought occupational therapy hung the moon because it was like literally the skills of the living, which is ironic because for me, up until I really got my master's degree in my 30s, I had a hard time living. Like the skills of the living was hard because of depression and anxiety and being a highly sensitive person and feeling so many things inside my body and not being able to put a name to it.
Okay. So how did that manifest in daily life? Because, look, I think everyone has an idea of a little general malaise and depression, even if you've never been seriously depressed. And we understand that you kind of move through life a little molassesy and stuff. But when you say you couldn't handle living, like what were the parts? What were the little things in your mind that maybe other people don't feel like? Can give us a little inside view into that world?
It's so interesting. I think because of COVID and because of global pandemic and because of collective stress and collective trauma, I think everybody probably can identify with what I am about to say. But what it looked like for me way back when, and it still comes up every now and then, is really, overthinking, moving my nervous system into the fight, flight, freeze, maybe into shutdown. That's how it used to be, into potential like needing, numbing out, zoning out. What that could look like for people is, the doom scrolling on social media, like when we are maybe having an emotional response and rather than check in with our emotions or maybe the interaction that we just had with a loved one or a colleague or a coworker, rather than check in with that, we may go inward and we may take it out on ourselves and we may start to go through the negative spiral of thoughts. And then those thoughts, we're making up stories about them because that's how the brain likes to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. When we create something in our head and it has to have an ending. And if the ending is not there, then our brain is going to create it naturally. And sometimes that can be like the doom place. And so, for me, way back when, it was a hard time getting out of bed. It was drugs, and specifically really drugs and alcohol would make me feel better. There was a lot of self-soothing mechanisms, which is, it's so fascinating because now I teach people how to regulate themselves rather than going to those places. I'm not saying we never go to those places because that's just not reality.
Right.
But we don't have to get stuck there. And that's the difference. I think the difference, and this may answer your question more fully, is I used to go through cycles that would last anywhere from 6 weeks to 3 months. Mm-hmm. And it was really hard to keep a job during that time.
Sure. Now
my cycles will be maybe an hour to 2 hours. And now I know what to do with them. And that's different. That's resilience.
You're right. And which is what you teach. And I love that. That is the biggest skill of life, is to change perspective onward and upward. That is really modeling our ancestral hunter-gatherer mindset, which was onward and upward, seeing failure as feedback instead of blaming oneself. So the fact that you're able to turn it around. And what I like about you saying that is, look, you can get to a certain point, and that doesn't look everybody, like you live in a real world. We all react. How long for? That's the only difference, right? How long for? How long are we going to continue on it? Now, I want to talk about, because I know you have, you've studied the brain, you understand neuroscience. Let's talk about this. It's so interesting, isn't it, that we use our brains to go down the worst case scenario spiral, right? That's like and again, maybe a primal perspective of just looking out for danger, being careful, being vigilant. But the other part of it is, it's so interesting that we're not using our brains to do the opposite when we can, and and this is your work. So tell us a little bit about, I know our brains like the beginning, story, end, but tell us about the compounded effects of negative thinking in this way, unless we catch it. And also, why aren't we naturally wired to go the other way? Like, why aren't we spiraling into the, because we all intend to spiral ourselves into a good thing. We put on a meditation, we go, I'm going to write the intentionally, we know how to do this, but it's so fun. And I'm wondering, is it just a primal mechanism of being vigilant and on edge ego because, you're watching out for stuff and that's still in us?
Oh, I have so many answers coming to mind. My very first answer was, I don't think I have an answer for that question of like, why don't we go to the other place? But now I'm like, okay, blood-brain barrier, electronics, stress, all of this breaks down and goes into the blood-brain barrier, which then gets into the bloodstream that can create autoimmune. Like all of these different things can happen. Too many blue lights, too many screens, too much, instant gratification rather than what we used to be, which was in nature, being with the trees and going in the cycles of the moon and the sun. When the sun rises, our hormones, all about that, right? Like we wake up and it wakes us up. And so it's just like we have gotten so out of sync with the natural rhythms of what probably earthly medicine was originally intended for, that I think the brain's ability to survive is amazing. It really is. Here's the thing, like survival, that is not the goal. Thriving is the goal. So I think that's one way it's gone haywire.
I'll go ahead and coin it right now. Surthrival.
Okay. Wait, say it again one more time.
Surthrival instead of survival.
I love that. Yes. How can we do that? So that's what I teach people how to do, because here's the problem with the brain wiring. When we look at the axon, which is the myelin, there's a myelin sheath around an axon. These are the point A and the point B in the brain that, we have a sensation, we have a thought. It takes, it's like a train, and it's going to exit at the next place. When we go over the same thing over and over and over, and that could be from ourselves, that could be from, patterning from our childhood, from messages that we had as a child that we never got to debunk or clean out or clear out, that myelin sheath gets really, really strong. Not only that, and I know you're going to love this one, everything, like we always have to tackle the gut microbiome. And when we don't, that myelin sheath that gets all junked up with all the high fructose corn syrup and fast foods and coffees and all the things that isn't, and I'm not saying no coffee because I love my coffee, but it's like everything in moderation, depending on what you have underlying inside your own ecosystem. All of that, I think, adds up to a brain that has a hard time going off onto what I call the feeder road. That when you have that neuronal connection of the toxic thinking and it becomes habitual, it gets really challenging. And we actually have to learn how to turn that off and jump off onto a new feeder road. And the feeder road is the health, the wellness, the prevention. And it's bumpy and it can be tricky. And I think the biggest challenge I see for people, which is what I love teaching, is how to break it down for their individualized blueprint, for their body, for their brain, for their sensory nervous system, because there isn't a one size fits all. And that's where I think people get messed up.
Yeah. And that's what I love about your work, because your whole goal is creating a customized wellness journey to everyone and their specific needs using all of these modalities. Well, yeah, I mean, look, we could talk forever about this. I don't want it to be a boring health conversation for people, because I'm sure they've heard a ton from me at this point about it over the years. But yeah, the gut and the brain. Oh man, we got to start there. If that's the only element you got going on right now, and even if it's just like, I don't have a lot of gas. Oh wait, guess what? More stuff's coming your way that you're not going to want. That's a bad sign, right? So everybody needs to tune into gut health, bowel health, and all of that type of stuff. It is absolutely related to our levels of happiness and energy. And anyone can tell you who's in like, I remember when I went primal and kind of cleaned out my life, and so did my brother. We were both on a really good path, and then Christmas came along and we thought, you know what, F it, let's go get like a cherry pie and an apple pie, and we went and we got a couple of pies, and we're really healthy, we're fit, our blood glucose regulated, all this stuff. We each had like one piece, and I am not kidding, we passed out like heroin addicts within 20 minutes. We were out. We looked like drug addicts on the couch. We were done, because we hadn't had a hit like that in so long. And then we go power up some major shitty glucose. And we were just like, wow, you don't feel those effects like that though, if you're on the regular train, you don't even notice it. So yes, I'm grateful to you that you cover gut health, and this is part of your knowledge and your work with people, because you can't ignore it and expect the mind and perspective to get better.
No. And that's where I see a lot of people missing it. And they will, go on and like do this fad diet. And, they'll try I have a group program called Embody Your Wealth. And it's really teaching entrepreneurs how to embody health and wellness while running their business. And one of the things that I see happening is like, I ask them, have you ever tried gluten-free? Have you ever tried dairy-free? And without fail, like the answer is, oh, I've done it for 5 days. Man, I mean, like one red blood cell turns over in 90 to 120 days. That was not enough time to explore anything. Like, no, what's the point?
Agreed on that. And by the way, so even though I have hypothyroidism and it's treated, of course, but I don't have Hashimoto's. So I don't have an autoimmune disorder, of which gluten is absolutely a primary offender. But I will say this, even though I'm paleo and so I don't eat gluten, but occasionally I do, just because I don't have an autoimmune disorder. So I don't really care if I'm going to have a regular piece of pizza every now and then. But I can say from experience, even just a few days of going off the rails, like, oh yeah, Christmas out bread. I feel it. I feel depressed after 3-4 days. My brain's not working right. And all I did was eat fucking bread and gluten.
Dude, I don't
even drink. Like, so I feel it. Once you clean out, you feel it. And then I remember also after cleaning out after 30 days, it had been like 3 months of going paleo, no grains. And then I went to go have some sushi, and I only had 4 bites of sushi with rice on them for the first time in months. I had such horrible gas like the next day. And I went to Marxist and my mentor, and I said, look, I know this is TMI, but what the fuck? I had like 4 little tiny things of rice. Is that really possible? And he goes, you see now how used to it your body had gotten, that once you eliminated it and you brought back in, then you really see what the hell that was doing to your body. You can do these experiments, but you're right. 5 days isn't enough. I would say, we always say in paleo primal world, like minimum 21, 30 days to kind of switch things around. But I agree with you. You got to go longer than that, particularly if you do have an autoimmune disorder. You got to go longer than 3 months on this train to see those benefits. And one step backward could be like, one piece of gluten. I talked to No Grain, No Pain author, and he said that even though it might get out of your intestinal arena 10, 15 days, the inflammatory effects can last up to 3 months. So I don't know would you suggest 3 months eliminating gluten as a first, like, what's your, hey, test it out, and here's what you should do time-wise?
You know what? I don't know if I really say like a time frame for it. I always say a minimum of 30 days, and then bring it back in and just with the curiosity of, I wonder how my body is going to respond to this. I wonder how my digestion is going to feel. I wonder how my brain is going to feel. And when you bring it back in, don't also get drunk at the same time, because you just won't know what happened. Like, I mean, like really be strategic at it. Be like, if you are totally going dairy-free for, 30 days, 60 days, and then you're going gluten-free, any of these things, when you bring it back in, just bring that one thing back in,
yes,
and let your body tell you, because the body is so much smarter than we give it credit for. And that's the thing. When we are given the right support and the right tools for the specific body, I mean, you can smash so many challenges, so many ailments, so many diseases in your physical, your emotional, your spiritual, so many. And it's funny, you told me about your experience when I was doing my own gut healing protocol, which is why my adult program called Emotional Resilience is actually a minimum of 4 months long. If people want to do a gut protocol, it is a minimum of 6 months, because everybody's going to cheat. And then we're going to be starting over.
Right. Have the built-in human, fallibility.
Right. And it's okay, because people have to go through their own stages of change when they are exploring how to help themselves heal. But I remember when I was doing my gut protocol, and I did this too, right? So I know, I think it was probably like 6 or 8 weeks in. I was feeling really good. Also, like no alcohol, no dairy, like all these different things. I went out for the best pho in Austin, Texas. I was living in Texas at the time. And of course, it's the best place in America. So how can I not have it? And I had never been in so much digestive pain before. And not only that, I could not keep a thought in my head. And I literally had tunnel vision. Like when I opened my eyes, like it was a tunnel. And I had never experienced anything like that. And I was like, okay, there is really something to this. So it's just really interesting that when you do remove, when you bring it back in, what your body is going to tell you.
Yeah. And I mean, whether someone's goal out there is to optimize their gut and their nervous system health, or want to experience profound healing or tap into intuitive gifts, you're the person who's going to do that, who also can help people liberate themselves from past traumas. Trauma is a huge thing. Let's talk about resiliency and this effect. Let's just say there's someone out there that's had a lot of trauma, is beaten down. They really are like resilient. Like, I can't even figure my shit out. Like, what's one of the first things you could say, hey, just think about it this way, or let me give you a little tip or a little bit of encouragement to show you, because I know you've done it. I can do it. I mean, most of us out there writing books or coaching, our test has been our testimony, right? I suffered with thyroid and had to help myself. Therefore, now I'm a thyroid expert, and so on. Let's talk a little bit about that, because I think there's people out there that feels like resiliency has to come from an already built-in confidence they don't have yet. And you and I both know you can build it and attain it. It just takes some work. So if someone's feeling like, resiliency is the last fucking thing on my mind, Dahlya, like I am down here, like give people some hope right now.
I always want to encourage people to look at, like, and this may be very, I don't know, but Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When it comes to trauma healing, this is what I want to tell them. And when I'm working with anybody with like depression or anxiety or PTSD, or even like, hair pulling, skin picking, nail biting, all these different things, the body has found a beautiful way to find safety within. It's not our fault that it has moved to a disassociation, possibly maladaptive behaviors. And that we got caught up in it because it was easier and because there was relief. And that's what the brain is always seeking. It's seeking relief and safety, even if that safety is hiding under the covers or in the closet. Because it is the brain's job to keep us safe. And so when people are in that place, it can be really scary, especially when you don't know how to get out of it. And this is where, it is really important to find trusted and trained professionals that can not just hold you through it, but can teach you just the foundational tools of how to move out of it. I have a client in my program right now in emotional resilience, and she hired me because we are friends, but she used to go through disassociations in her body because of past trauma. And she came to me because she knew I would hold her in a safe way and teach her exactly, helping her and watching her navigate it. And, the easiest thing I can tell somebody is, if you are in any kind of response, the easiest way in is through the body. The trouble is, it's also sometimes the trickiest way in, because people's bodies, when they're in their body, sometimes that in itself is like a trauma because of their own past lived experiences. And that's where it gets tricky. What I would say is get barefoot, go outside, ground into just nature. And you're not going to feel like all that much better, but you're going to be present in your body. And that's usually the first step. And then if you can learn how to slow your breath down, you can Google alternate nostril breathing. And it is just a tried and proven system that can work really fast if it doesn't trigger you to come back into that vagal stimulation to calm the nervous system so that your frontal lobe, your brain, comes back online and you can move next into like an action step. Does that help?
I love it. I have a couple of thoughts. First of all,
yes,
everyone out there, trauma, if you have multiple issues in your life and trauma is perhaps a part of that, even if it's your shitty mindset or whatever, it is, you have to get to it. My best friend of like 35 years, his mother, because of serious childhood trauma, and again, she died recently, maybe at age 70 or so, it led to multiple personality disorder, which now they call dissociative person. I forget what the new term is for it. She had 13 different personalities. Now, this was so strange, of course, because you hear about this thing and it's so like, oh, really? Whatever. Right. And it was strange talking to him about it because as he got to know her personality. So he would know when she lost her driver's license. She turned into a 13-year-old girl. And this was because she never, and look, back then there weren't podcasts and there weren't people like you know what I mean? And there were only classic therapists and probably people didn't know a lot about this stuff. And she never healed that trauma. So I'm not saying to you out there, if you have trauma, you're going to end up having multiple personality disorders. I'm saying this leads to some serious shit, guys. And you don't know. So get on it, please, because this is one of the best things you can do for your life is to see someone like Dahlya and have her help you with this trauma. My other thought.
Case in point, can I say something to that really quick? Okay. So case in point, this client that I was telling you about, who's my friend, we were talking a year ago and I saw her going into like a disassociation state and I saw the identity break and I called her out on it. And I'm like, hey, listen, like if you don't deal with this now, it's going to make you deal with it. And she was like, I don't have time. I'm working. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I'm like, okay. And she ended up checking herself into a trauma actually place in New Mexico after I helped her research it. And now she is doing amazing, unbelievable. Like, but it's just like, if we don't make time for it, it will come out in other ways.
Yeah. And then it's really, because it really impeded her life in so many ways, yet it was almost too far down the line at this point,
Yeah.
And she'd already developed health issues and those were affecting, of course, emotional states and everything else. So the wherewithal to go persevere to fight for it ended up becoming you unmotivated and no one else can force you to go deal with your trauma.
Absolutely.
The other thing that I loved you talked about was, putting your feet on some grass. Now this, we hear about this grounding and all this kind of stuff, but the story that I love about this, and I might've told it quickly before, I have a friend who has some anxiety and I had them go see my functional medicine doctor. And I said, how was the appointment? And, he said, well, he gave me a really strange recommendation. He said, like, I needed to go ground myself and then I needed to go take off my shoes. And even though he lives in a part of the city in Los Angeles, to go even on a patch of grass and put my feet there. And then the other funny recommendation was he also recommended like a didgeridoo. And we were like, okay, well, that's maybe too far of a suggestion for my friend. Was like, yeah, I'm not going to sit in the middle of a field the didgeridoo. So we have a joke about that now. But here's the interesting, I thought, well, that's a very interesting thing that Dr. Forsman told him, because he didn't tell me that, but also I am immersed in nature. I live in the mountains. I'm more grounded probably. So I'm not shocked that that wasn't my recommendation. So my friend didn't really do much about it. Then the pandemic hit. He's at home and we're like walking every day in the mountains in nature. I'm taking him all these hikes. And after literally like a couple of weeks, he starts to sleep a little bit better. His headaches are going away. And I said, you know what? Isn't this funny? Because like a year or two ago, didn't my doctor tell you that you needed to ground yourself? And look at what this nature has done for you. So I always tell people, if you're living in the middle of like downtown Chicago and you can't get out to some park or somewhere where you're immersed in nature, there are the most incredible YouTube videos of beautiful naturescapes. I put them on myself, and I live in beautiful nature. I'll put them on sometimes because of the way they can affect your mood. But we also know that real nature and breathing in, the real stuff from dirt and trees is good for you. But I just love that suggestion. And I wanted to tell everyone I've seen it firsthand really change a skeptic who was like, yeah, whatever, put my feet in the ground, not doing it, and then like I saw how it changed their life. Yeah.
I love that story. Thank you so much for sharing that. It does make all the difference in the world. And I think part of it is like, we just end up slowing down too and becoming present in a way that we're not necessarily trained to do anymore. And that will help bring everything back down so that you can experience, greater sleep. One of my friends, I've been helping her with her daughter because I also have a program where I work with parents and kids, and the mom has been dealing with circadian rhythm disruption, meaning like she has migraines, her sleep is all messed up, her sleep-wake cycle, like it's all messy. And the recommendation to go along with the whole nature idea, my recommendation was go camping for at least 3 nights to allow just like the natural rhythms of the body to start helping them to reset. And it's the same idea. And after that, she was sleeping so much better. I mean, it's not rocket science.
No, it really, yeah. Some of these things sound simple, too good to be true, but they really work. I would love to hear, you've mentioned a few. I'd love to hear some more 180s of people you've worked with, and, to inspire us that, hey, you can get to the other side despite how bad it can be.
Oh, I love that question. Okay. So I have a client in my emotional resilience program, and she is a incredible, resilient veteran who had a lot of trauma. And, it came out, it manifested in so many different ways, like depression, anxiety, even hair pulling. It was just, there was so much childhood wounding. There was so much bullying that she was in a constant state of like dysregulation. She found me, and being this veteran who's very matter of fact, we did a gut healing protocol, and watching her transform to connect emotional stresses at home that she has been integrating into her body and how it connected to her bowels. First off, I mean, that in itself probably took like 6 to 8 weeks because she couldn't just understand cognitively the connection between her emotions and how it messed up her digestive system, which then affected the autoimmunity. She also, fibromyalgia was something that actually she's not experiencing fibromyalgia pains anymore because we've cleaned so much up. But now, because of the work, we have continued working together, and it is amazing because she is so much more emotionally intelligent that she just needs like a shift in perspective. And then she's using the tools that I offer in different portals, depending on the different program that people are in, and she'll go use it. There is a forgiveness breathwork meditation that I encouraged her to put on the next time she got a massage because something emotionally triggering happened in her family. And immediately after that, she told me, we talk a lot about bowels in my programs because it is just everything. And I need to know what's happening. That tells me so much. And immediately she's like, I had the best massage. They played the forgiveness breath work. And I had a huge bowel movement right afterwards. And I slept like a baby. And I didn't go into depression. I wasn't even anxious about it. And I didn't engage in hair pulling. That is a 180. And it's amazing because she's in her 40s, late 40s, and she has spent, 48 years stuck in that traumatized body. And now she's experiencing freedom and awareness that is unprecedented. And what's so interesting is that when she and I were, messaging back and forth in Voxer, I was telling her the way that she was coaching a family friend and their daughter who was engaging in some eating disorder. She was talking about body image. She was talking about so much love and training was like coming from her. And I was like, you could probably get certified as a life coach, just so you know. But it's like, and she was like, wow, I never thought about helping people in that way, even though she has a heart to do that. Mm-hmm. So it's just really interesting because people will pigeonhole themselves into certain areas. Well, I've always done this, so I'm going to keep doing it, and there's nothing else I can do about it. And that's faulty thinking. And when you start to experience freedom emotionally, physically, and watch it start literally shedding weight physically and emotionally, I mean, and she's dropped over 40 pounds and she's been able to keep it off. So much of it was trauma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's amazing to watch.
There was someone that worked for a former company, and they finally dealt with, I guess, being molested as a child. And it wasn't really until then that they finally then lost the weight, right? There's so many things about that, right? Trying to pad oneself up to not be looked at, or you feel like I don't want anyone to notice me because I don't want anyone to attack me. There's lots of things that I'm sure everyone's like, okay, yeah, we see that. We know that. We've heard that before. But it was amazing. And she just, it like unleashed a whole new her, and it was, we had watched her for years, and, she tried everything. And then it wasn't like she tried anything different with diet and exercise. It was something about really, again, getting through that trauma. And then also, emotions and gut. Okay. So, when I used to perform sketch comedy, and years ago, when you first start to perform on stage, we just call it the pre-show shits, because your initial, it happens to everybody. It's like, I would go just poop my brains out before the first 3 of the 4 shows that we did. And I remember people like, oh, you've got the pre-show shits. Yeah, no, you'll get over it at some point. And then I became a veteran performer. And then I remember other people like before show, like holding their stomachs. I'm like, oh, you got the pre-show, go take care of it. Like it absolutely does. Even falling in love, even being in certain other heightened emotions that are positive and aren't scary can also affect your cortisol, your adrenaline, and things that kind of make you feel like you just did a couple lines of cocaine and now you're like in the bathroom pooping. I mean, that is kind of so we can also affect our own emotions and then affect our gut that way too. But no point in trying the emotional stuff unless you actually do a gut healing protocol of some kind. I just don't think mind can get over. You can't eat ice cream and, baguettes all day long for 4 weeks and think that you're going to fix your brain. So
no, that's absolutely right. And that's, it really is like that missing piece. People will think they can do all these other things. Even like, I'm a big proponent of like movement medicine and the somatic energies and really like getting into the body. Just when you look at sympathetic, parasympathetic, when you look at the autonomic nervous system, when you look at all of it, it's all freaking connected. Like, I don't understand why people think you can't work on one or you can't put them all together. Like you have to. We are not. And I feel like, it's one of the reasons I transitioned what I like to say beyond healthcare, is because we are not just a brain. We are not just a heart. We are not just our intestines. We are not a diagnosis. We are not a stigma. It's all put together. And when we look at ourselves from that whole body perspective, things start to make so much more sense. And for any, for the adults listening who have children, you're watching your children who need to also experiment and explore what it looks like to integrate all parts of their being as well. And there's just one little caveat that I want to say, that when I'm really working on like emotional resilience and emotional intelligence with clients who have trauma, something I want to point out is we don't go to the negative stuff first. We don't go to the nasty, down and dirty, because talking it out is going to re-traumatize you. I start teaching them how to have an exploration and a journey into, because you brought it up, the positive emotions, the connection, the joy, the love. What does that feel like in the body? And when we can, focus on that, the scary stuff seems less scary. The trouble is we just don't stop enough to feel any of it.
Before we wrap up, I know that I know this just because every single coach, healing practitioner has had someone, I get them too, and I'm sure you do, who are like, they feel like, I don't know, I'm a lost cause, right? I'd love to hear of what was the story of someone that came to you that's like, there's no way, like, I've tried everything, like, I've just, trust me, I might be your hardest case, like that kind of situation, because you and I both know it's all workable for everyone, no matter what their situation. But I'd love to hear what like the worst case scenario was that was presented to you.
You know what? It's in
Not
terms of
necessarily the
symptomology
details,
or people.
Yeah, just, well, I mean, just people who felt like I'm too damaged and there's no way I can. And I'm sure you even felt that way yourself at one point, but you know what I mean? There's always that one person that's like, oh, there's no way. Like, you know.
Okay. It was exactly that client that I was actually telling you about, the 180 transformation.
Oh, yeah.
She came and it's interesting because her brain patterning, her thoughts were, there's nothing that's going to be enough. It's not going to work. It was all scarcity mindset because nothing had worked in the past. And it was one of the reasons I created this program, and the way that I created it is because that's how I felt when I was in my 20s. And I don't want anybody to feel that way because it's actually not accurate. I call it actually the healthcare trauma cycle, that we go into that cycle and it's not enough. It doesn't help us the way that we think that we are able to heal. And it doesn't actually work in the way that we feel it's supposed to. And so we think that there's nothing out there that's going to work. So, sometimes I will tell clients, give me, 4 or 6 months. And if it doesn't work, I'll give you a percentage of your money back. Yeah. I mean, I've done that, and nobody ever asks for their money back.
That's right, because if they do the work. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that. You have so many ways we can work with you. You've got a course, you've got some adult healing programs. Tell us a little bit about what you have to offer people. And everybody, by the way, even though I will put it in the show notes, it's holisticmedicalhealing.com is Dahlya's website. So tell us about the ways we can work with you and the programs you offer.
Oh, absolutely. So I have first, I'll start with the younger population, a superpower program for kids that is geared towards children, working with the parents as well, because I have found in my past healthcare practice, that was where some of the gaps lied, where we weren't working with the parents in the way to help them and empower them and equip them in a way to help the child. So that program, like I have said, it's for kids who may be struggling with anxiety, depression, hair pulling, skin picking, nail biting, any kind of trauma, bullying, anything like that, body image, self-image, addictions. So I have that program, and that is a minimum of 6 months. I have an adult program called Emotional Resilience, and that is a 4 or 6 month program, depending on whether or not someone is going to do a true gut healing protocol or not. And this is for somebody to, move from trauma to transformation, from the gut to the heart to the head, putting all of it together. And in all of these programs, I have lots of different resources to teach the how, because many times that is where people get stuck. And that is why in the majority of my programs, I also offer, one-to-one Voxer support, because it's in those moments that you don't know what to do, that you sometimes need somebody, hey, go listen to this, go watch that, go do this, and then report back. And it's up to them whether or not they do it. For the empowered CEO who is maybe a highly sensitive, empathetic person who just wants to serve the world and really wants to make a change in the world, that is my 4-month group Embody Your Wealth program, where I work and teach them how to have energetic boundaries to come back to their self-care so that their business doesn't really take a toll on their physical or emotional body. And so we are tackling emotional health, mindset, nervous system regulation 101. There's movement medicine every single month because movement matters and somatic matters. And then we also tackle, a little bit of the gut. It's only 1 month long for the gut. So it's really, we're not doing a gut protocol or anything else like that. I have other programs depending on the length of time and, financial investment and energetic investment that people want to do. But, I'm always coming out with masterclasses and other ways that people can work with me. So, if any of this resonates with you, I would encourage someone to contact me from my website or contact me on social media. It's holistic.medical.healing on Instagram, and just DM me and, let me know that, hey, and we could set up a potential clarity call or anything else like that. If you want to get a taste of my work, I have a free 3-step brain optimization toolkit. First part is a channeled breathwork, energy work, guided meditation. The second part is movement medicine. The third part is mental health for gut health. And I'm a natural teacher. So every single, part of that free toolkit has a lot of teachings about the interaction and how to heal trauma. And I just, feel like everybody needs to have resources at their fingertips that they can, rely on and really use. And the feedback from that has been spectacular.
I love it. For everyone out there, if you are someone who's feeling as a result of trauma or anything else, very sensitive, vulnerable, don't have the wherewithal, the resiliency, this is your girl. She helps people channel that sensitivity into spiritual intelligence. I love that you say that on your website, because you really can. And those people are really primed for it. Even they don't think they, quote, have it yet, but they're really more primed for it. So I think it's actually, I love what you're doing. Love your work. Any last thoughts on anything you'd like to leave our audience with before we head out?
You know what? I'm going to encourage that any listeners that are listening to, rather than, go on to the next podcast or go on to the next thing, to just take a few minutes and sit with yourself. Put your hand on your heart, put your hand on your belly, and just feel what that feels like. To just pause and quiet and be okay if there's chitter chatter in your mind, and not judge it and not criticize it. We're so much into doing, and we really need to start focusing more on being, with honestly less consumption, which I know is not great for the whole podcast world, but you know what I mean.
I do. Thank you so much. And everyone, again, that's holisticmedicalhealing.com. Thank you so much for all the work you're doing out there to help people. And it's been a joy chatting with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. And for everyone else, we'll see you next week. Hey, listeners, over the years, a ton of companies have approached me to collaborate, but I will only promote companies whose products I believe in and that I actually use and consume on a regular basis. So let me tell you about some of my favorite companies that I can offer you discounts for. Rep Provisions, an amazing company doing incredible things for our planet, topsoil, and animals with regenerative agriculture, and it's my #1 source for quality pasture-raised meat and chicken. Visit repprovisions.com and use code L15 for 15% off. I'm also obsessed with a company called Carnivore Crisps. They make a lean, all-natural, and delicious alternative to conventional snacking, made with just real meat and real salt. Totally addictive, and my favorite ones are the beef brisket and the ribeye. Visit carnivorecrisps.com and use code PALEO10 for 10% off. I also love and regularly use Paleo Valley products. They make amazing supplements and delicious paleo products. I use the superfood greens powder, grass-fed beef sticks, the organ complex, and their bone broth bars. I love the lemon and apple. I also use their essential C complex and more. Visit paleovalley.com/promos/Elle Russ for 15% off. I also love Primal Kitchen. They make delicious paleo-approved, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and no refined sugar products, and I use them daily, from their collagen powders and sauces and marinades to their avocado and olive oil. So good, so healthy. Visit primalkitchen.com and use code L10 for 10% off. I also love paleo powder and use it almost on everything I cook. They make incredible seasoning blends, and they also have these incredible grain-free coatings that feel just like crispy breadings that you would have had prior to knowing that there's another way. So visit paleopowder.com and use code L15 for 15% off.